So Arizona's Senior Senator Krysten Sinema, along with, I believe, 33 other United States senators, have asked the UN Security Council to designate Hamas a terrorist organization. Many of you may be surprised that they're not already designated that. Joining us now is Senator Sinema to talk about that. Senator, welcome back.
Well, good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. I was, as much as I do this for a living, I'm still a little bit surprised. I guess I shouldn't be, but a little surprised that this designation hasn't already happened.
Well, you and me both. I got to tell you, I mean, it's so clear that Hamas is a terrorist organization. Their stated goal is to eradicate Israel and the people of Israel. And I mean, that's why their slogan is from the river to the sea. It's a genocidal call. So we know who they are. And it's long past time that the United Nations designate Hamas as a terrorist organization so that we can impose sanctions on them and cut off their ability to seek financing globally.
See, and that was going to be my next question. This is not just a designation that is just we're saying you're bad people. There are some consequences that go with this designation, correct?
Well, it's actually the consequences that I care about most. Right now, because Hamas is not designated as a terrorist organization by the United Nations, it's hard for us to impose sanctions. So the UN can't impose sanctions on Hamas, and Hamas is still able to access international donors and financial networks. Now, we know that Hamas's largest funding source has long been Iran. But in recent years, they've been able to access funding from other sources as well. And by designating them as a terrorist organization, we can cut off that access to international financing and make it more difficult for them to do what they're doing, which is continuing to wreak havoc and indiscriminately murder the people of Israel as well as the people of their own Palestinian territory.
Arizona's Senior Senator Krysten Sinema is joining us. All right, so Senator, what is the timeline on this? How quickly could this designation happen? And have you gotten any feedback yet on whether or not it will happen?
Well, as you know, we, the 33 senators, we together sent a letter to the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations urging that they introduce a United Nations security resolution. So that's the next step, is that resolution has to be introduced, then it has to be debated, and then the UN Security Council will make a decision. The reality is that we don't know what will happen at the UN Security Council. We've seen in recent weeks that there are members of the United Nations who are failing to stand with our greatest ally in the Middle East, the only democracy in the Middle East, which is Israel. And so this requires all of us to stand up and point out the anti-Semitism that is occurring around the world, the danger that Israel is in because of these continuing terrorist attacks from Hamas, and to push our allies around the world to help us to stand up and support Israel.
I had a story about some House members that had seen some of the video footage and a video recapping the atrocities on October 7th. Have you in the Senate or any of your colleagues, have you seen those videos?
So Senator Rosen, who is a senator from Nevada, actually hosted a private screening earlier this week for members of the Senate to view some of these videos. I was not able to attend that specific screening, but I have seen some of the videos. And I'll be honest with you, it's not something that I am willing or able to discuss because it's so horrifying that I don't want. Yeah. I don't even want to talk about it because it's beyond what you can even imagine. It shows a level of depravity that is beyond what I think people have experienced in our lifetimes.
We had a student from ASU. She's part of the Chabad Jewish student life at ASU, and there was an incident the other night that involved some rock throwing at a meeting, and the Jewish students were escorted off campus by campus police. And I know your affiliation with Arizona State University. Have you had any contact with leadership there about the safety of Jewish students on campus?
Well, one of my employees was actually there. One of my employees is a member of the student government at ASU and was in the room when that happened. And several of my interns were also in the room when that happened, participating in the lawful, appropriate activities that were occurring at ASU on the part of student government. So obviously, I was very concerned for the safety of my interns and my employee, and also for all of the students who were involved. The good news is, Mike, is that we have in Michael Crow a university president who stands strongly and firmly with Israel, with Israel's right to defend herself, and with the students in our ASU community who are members of the Jewish community and those who stand firmly with Israel. A lot of folks don't know this, but Michael Crow was actually the first public university president to join a coalition a number of weeks ago, standing firmly against anti-Semitism and standing behind Israel. I was really proud of that. So not only am I grateful to represent ASU, but as you know, Mike, I've graduated from ASU multiple times, and I teach at ASU. I've been teaching there for over 20 years. So this is very personal for me. And I'm really, really happy to see that President Crow has U.S. ASU police on the case, investigating who engaged in that activity. And I am confident that President Crow and the team at ASU will not rest until the perpetrators are held accountable for that activity.
That's great news. Same topic, but just a little bit off the subject. The border. There is now reports about the increased numbers of people on the terror watch list that have entered the country. And also, although some of the encounters are down at the border, the Tucson sector, again, was the busiest sector of the southern border of the United States. Have you talked about the national security issues with the administration, and especially that the Tucson sector is staying so busy?
Yeah, Mike, I'm so glad you brought this up because as you and I think other Arizonans know, right now I'm actually leading the negotiations in the United States Senate to come up with a border package that we hope to pass in December. And this is a package that would address the security gaps, and it would address the loopholes that exist in our system right now that are being exploited by cartels like the Sinaloa cartel, and that are not only are they allowing unprecedented numbers of migrants from all over the world into Arizona, and frankly, just dumping them out into parking lots in small towns like Douglas and Bisbee and Naco and Nogales, but they also are including a number of folks who are on the terrorist watch list and people who are suspected of engaging in very dangerous activity. So it's more imperative than ever that we address the situation. You are right that the Tucson sector continues for several months in a row to be the highest volume sector. We're getting, over 14,000 people have come to the Tucson sector just in the last 2 months. That is unsustainable for small towns in southern Arizona. As you know, Mike, I was born and raised in Tucson, so I'm intimately familiar with the size of these towns and the capacity. And the reality is that we don't have the capacity to process migrants, those who are here to get a job, but also those who are here to do bad. So I'm working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, and our goal is to close this loophole and ensure that we're creating a system that allows us to take back the control from the cartels and actually, as the U.S. government, screen every single person who is approaching our border, making sure that those who are here to do bad get deported, and that those who are here seeking asylum have an actual claim to asylum, that they actually are realistically going to get in the queue and have a chance to get that asylum. So it's a lot of work to be done, but it's my top priority right now.
So one more question on the border. There was a story this week. Two teenagers, 18 and 19 years old, in the East Valley were arrested for human smuggling. They had been recruited by the cartels, probably on social media. This seems to be a big trend, and it's another way that our young people are being endangered. It's not just fentanyl deaths. Are there repercussions? Are there laws that can be enhanced to take away the incentive of the large amounts of money for young people? How do we stop this trend so that parents aren't finding out after their kids are arrested that they're part of human trafficking because the money is so good?
Mike, I'm so glad you brought this up because not enough people understand what's happening here. Social media platforms like TikTok and Snapchat are being utilized by the cartels to recruit young teens, sometimes as young as 12 years old, from southern and middle Arizona, telling them that they're going to get a ton of cash if they just come down to the border. And what happens is they take vehicles and they come down to the border and they smuggle in migrants and they smuggle drugs and they engage in these high-speed chases. Now, some of these have not only have they resulted in arrests, dramatically changing the lives of these teens for the future, but some of these also have resulted in crashes where people have died. And actually, a couple months ago, I brought mayors from some of our southern Arizona border towns to Washington, D.C. to my committee. You know, I chair the border subcommittee in the Senate. And I had them tell the stories of these chases that are happening in places like Sierra Vista, right outside of Fort Huachuca, and what it actually is doing to those families and to those communities. So I've introduced legislation that actually requires those social media companies to share information with the federal government, with the Department of Homeland Security, about this kind of cartel activity so that the government can actually go and find the cartels and shut them down so that they're not able to recruit teens on these platforms. It's called it's the Social Media Cartel Act, and it's passed through the United States Senate unanimously. And it's actually, I'm currently negotiating to get this in the end of the year package on our defense bill because it is a national security issue. So my hope is to come back to you by the end of this year, Mike, and tell you that that bill has made it to the president's desk so that we can crack down on this issue. You know, these young kids, they think they're going to make fast money, but they're ruining their lives and they're endangering their own safety.
Senator, I always appreciate the time we get with you. I know you're extremely busy. Thank you for coming on again. And please have a happy Thanksgiving. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
You too. Thanks so much, Mike. Have a great Thanksgiving.
That is Senator Krysten Sinema.